Welcome back, Cat 37 CATIA surfacing class. We're going to cover swept surfaces. Okay, so I am going to make two additional videos for swept surfaces. Today I'm just going to give you just a quick introduction on swept surfaces. Our second video will focus on explicit swept surfaces, meaning you're actually using a profile that you can physically see. So if I go to the notes, in our next video, we're going to talk about explicit, meaning you actually have a profile that you can physically see to create your swept surface using guide curves or a guide curve and a spine to help you guide the surface along. Implicit is when you actually don't have a profile. CATIA will automatically generate it for you. Okay, so once again, explicit, you pick a profile. Our third video will be implicit, where you actually don't physically see or pick a profile. Okay, but I'm going to demonstrate it anyway for this tutorial. Okay, so we're going to go into the swept command or sweep command right next to offset or below offset. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at swept surfaces. Okay, so we have the option once again of using an explicit profile. Again, you physically see the profile. That's explicit. And the second option is linear. Okay, so if I was to pick my guide curves and go with linear, so once again, these are our guide curves. It helps guide the surface along. Okay, using guide curves and using a spine to stiffen it, to sweep it across. So the first one was explicit, where we actually see a profile. And a good example of that is the covered wagon, which I'll mention in the later videos. So we're generating a surface. So think of the canvas as the surface we're trying to generate. And think of this as our profile, the arc. So for sweep, we're going to use one profile. And think of these sills here. Think of this as a windowsill. This is the guide curve, and then we have one on the opposite side. Okay, so here we physically see our profile. And later on, we're going to be creating loft surfaces, the multi-section command, which will come in a later video towards the end of the surfacing tutorials, where you can pick multiple profiles like you see these arcs here, right? But for sweep, we're only going to use one profile and use guide curves to guide it along. It's almost similar to extrude. Extrude is a straight sweep. Sweep, you're sweeping across, but our guides can curve outward to help shape the canvas as it goes across. It can make it wider in some areas or narrower in other areas. Okay, it's like taking a piece of cloth that's flexible, right? And you can pull it in different directions to shape it. Same idea, like when you have like an elastic, once again, elastic piece of cloth, and you're trying to shape it with a wire, right? Like a clothesline or a hanger for your clothes, a clothes hanger made out of wire that you can shape. Okay, same idea. All right, so when we go to implicit linear, that means we don't have a profile. Physically, we can't see it, but we can stretch it to make this canvas linear if we were to pull on it, right? So if we go back, okay, so instead of a explicit profile that we can physically see, we can do a linear, but we don't use a line. So if we just tell CATIA, hey, we want a linear, the linear option. Okay, so here's the linear option. The first one is explicit, where we actually physically pick one. So this is explicit. If you physically have this line. If you don't have this profile and you want the canvas on the covered wagon to go straight just by simply pulling on it. You don't need a line. You can just simply pull it, give it tension, right? So it'll generate an imaginary line to create the sweep. Okay, so that's a linear. That's a linear sweep, which we'll do on our third video for swept surfaces. And circular, same idea, except instead of an imaginary line, we're going to use an imaginary circle that we cannot physically see, but CATIA will generate a circle just by simply giving it a radius or allowing reference surfaces to generate that radius for us. Okay. Then finally, we'll do a conical profile. Conical can be elliptical, circular, parabolic, hyperbolic, or any conic shape, right? So conic shapes, think of a cone that's being sliced. So you take a cone and you slice it at different angles to create different conic shapes. Right, so depending on the slice, if you slice horizontally, you get a circle. If you slice at an angle from the horizontal, right? Let's say you rotate 45 degrees from the horizontal and you slice, you get an ellipse. If you slice vertically, you get hyperbolus. And if you slice at an angle from the vertical, right? So instead of vertical, you go at a slight angle. Now you're creating parabolas. Okay, so these are conic shapes. So when we refer to conic shapes, just think of slicing a cone at different angles. And these are the results we get. All right, so let's go back. Okay, so that'll be in the third video. All right, so we will be creating sweeps, simple sweeps. And we are going to encounter areas where we're going to have to tear portions of it, because sometimes you'll get a sweep that twists and it overlaps itself and it won't be able to generate the surface. So we will have to use setbacks, which I'll demonstrate in today's video. And we also have laws, right? Remember we talked about using laws to taper. So laws are pretty cool. You can do a whole lot of stuff with using the law option. And you can define your law as a constant taper, linear, S-type. Think of cosine and sine waves. And we'll demonstrate that, if not in the swept videos, in later videos. Okay, we also have relimiters. So when you do a sweep, you can limit it with relimiters. So if I go back to the covered wagon example, if you want to just cover a portion of it, you can limit. Say I want to limit the swept surface, even though we're starting here at the front, we can limit it from this arc to the next one and only have it sweep in this portion and cut off the remainder of it. Okay, so relimiters, it'll sweep the surface and then chop off excess that you don't want. And I'll demonstrate that in our second video. Okay, so once again, you can sweep along the whole surface here and use limiters to remove the excess. Okay, and it can be a plane or it can be a point. Okay, so this plane is limiting the starting, or maybe the ending. It's hard to tell, but I'll demonstrate this in our next video. Okay, we also have a smoothing option, just like offset. We talked about smoothing. Sometimes you don't get a nice smooth surface, so you can deviate slightly from our profiles and our guides to smooth out the surface. We will have to sacrifice exactness. I don't know if that's the right term, but you're going to deviate slightly from the profile. And in return, we'll get a smoother surface. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to remove twists. So in some areas, our guide curves or profile has too much of a sharp turn, and sometimes it'll create an overlap on our surface, which it will reject, give us an error message, and we need to use the setback. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that file. So sweep with the twist, and then in our second video we'll do the explicit, and the third video we'll do the implicit, linear, circular, and conic. All right, so let's do the sweep twist. And I believe I already have mine open. There it is. So I already have it open. Let me change the color just so we can see it. Okay, so we're going to generate a simple sweep, and we are going to do an implicit, and we'll go more into implicit sweeps in the third video. All right, so this first video for sweeps, we'll do a simple sweep. Okay, so this is going to be our guide curve. Let's go ahead and insert a new geoset. So this is going to be a quick video. The other ones will be a lot longer. All right, so we're going to do a surface and sweep it along this guide curve. So let's go ahead and follow the instructions. Okay, so we're going to do a sweep, and it's going to be implicit, linear. Let's go back. Let's see, here we go. So we're going to use the linear profile, and it's going to generate this surface. Let's see what the length is. Okay, 30 millimeters and 10 millimeters. These are the lengths we're going to use. We'll just guesstimate. It doesn't have to be exactly as the tutorial. And our goal is to get it to give us an error message. Hey, it's twisting, it's overlapping. Okay, so that's going to be our goal, to get it to twist on us and overlap, giving us an error message. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this surface. All right, so before we do, let's go back to our notes. We're going to use a linear sweep. Okay, so it'll be an implicit sweep, and we're going to correct the overlaps. All right, so let's go back. Okay, so let's go to sweep. Make sure you are in generative shape design. Okay, so make sure you are in generative shape design. If not, take this CATIA file to the GSD or generative shape design workbench. I'm already in that workbench. Let's do a sweep. All right, so we're going to go with implicit, the second option. The first one is explicit. That means you have physically a profile to pick from. Here we don't. We're going to let CATIA generate a linear profile, which we actually don't see. And we're going to go with, I believe it's reference curve. Let's try reference curve. If not, I'll come back and fix it. All right, so we're going to use this one as our guide curve. Okay, so this curve will be our guide curve. It's not our profile. Our profile will be a line that CATIA generates on its own. So let's go ahead and pick this one. And let's go ahead and let me go back. Make sure I didn't skip anything. Okay, so we're going to use sweep, line profile icon. So we're going to use a linear, with reference. So it'll do a default reference since we don't have one to pick. Okay, and we're going to select curve 1 as our guide curve, XY plane as our reference plane. So this is our reference plane or surface. So our reference surface can be a plane. Okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and follow these instructions. Okay, with reference, so I picked the wrong one. So go to the pull down, go with reference surface. We pick our guide curve, right? So this is our guide curve. There it is, guide curve 1. And as a reference, we're going to pick a plane. Which plane? The XY plane as our reference. So that'll give it an orientation. Okay. And for angle, let's see, what angle are we supposed to use? Doesn't mention any angle, so we can always use 0 or a different angle. And our lengths would be 30 and 10 millimeters for the length of this linear profile that we actually don't see. All right, so let's go and give it a length of 30 or 20. I already forgot, 30 and 10. Okay, so 30 and 10 for our lines, for our length for this imaginary line that we don't see. And let's hit preview, see what we get. Preview. Okay, and it is giving us something, right, as you can see. So even though we don't have a linear profile to pick, it actually generates one. So it creates its own line, and we give it a length of 30 and 10, and then it sweeps it along that guide curve. Let's see if I change the angle to 0. It doesn't give us an angle, so I'm assuming it's going to be 0. Let's type in 0 and preview. Okay, so far so good. All right, so it can give us different results. Notice it's giving us 4 results. So it's telling us, hey, based on your parameters, your input, we can come up with 4 different results. Pick one. So let's pick the next one, see what it looks like next. And preview. Looks the same. Go to next. Preview. Okay, so it's actually flipping the 30 and the 10 now. It's flipping it and it's telling us, hey, these twisted areas are overlapping. Okay, so you see all the red, and you can see here it's overlapping. It's not working. So we can either decrease the number, or we can change the setback, either here manually by sliding this bar or using these green arrows. Okay, so let's close. So this is what the tutorial wanted to go over. And that's when you have a situation where it's sweeping the surface. And in this area, it's going to overlap. And it's going to give you an error message. You cannot create a swept surface where it overlaps itself. So we have an error here and an error here. And again, it's because it's too long. All right, so let's go back to the tutorial. So we were able to generate this error message. So we can use these setbacks, these green arrows, we can pull on them to remove the portion we don't want, but yet allow it to generate the surface in 3 separate patches, and removing the bad areas where it overlaps. Okay, so I'm looking for an angle, but I don't see an angle. So it's okay, we'll just go with 0 unless I find an angle here to follow. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so I'm going to use these green arrows and pull on them. I may not be following the tutorial exactly as we're supposed to. That's okay. We're just trying to show here that I'm trying to remove these patches. Let's see, preview. Okay, see what it gives us. It's still giving us an error message. Okay, so let me decrease to 20. See if 20 works. So it doesn't like 30. That's too long where it's overlapping. Let's hit preview. Okay, now it's giving us something, right? Okay, so it's fixing the result. If I go back, and preview. Okay, so it's giving us an error here, right? So it's trying to fix this area. So we can always extend these and preview, and it'll kind of fix it, right? So it only removed a part of it. It didn't remove the whole thing. So we have these setbacks that we can play with by just pulling on it, or we can change the length. Another thing we can do is go with setbacks. Let's see what happens when I go back to 30. Now we'll change it back down. Let's see if I change the setback from 2% to 20%. Let's see what happens. Preview. Still doesn't like it. Okay. Close. And let's go down to 25. See if it accepts 25 and preview. Still doesn't like it. Okay, let's try 20. And preview, and it seems to like that. And once again, you can adjust the setback or remove part of the portion of the surface that is being generated, or trying to generate, and okay. Okay, so we're not getting exactly what we want. We can always remove these portions if we want. Let's go ahead and double click on it. Let's take the fill twisted areas option. We're going to turn that off, fill twisted areas, and preview. So another option is to just remove those portions, right? If you remove the fill twisted area, and we're going to have to manually go in there and create a new surface on either using the sweep command or a different command to patch things up. Okay, so hit OK. So it's asking now, hey, do you want all these 3 separate surfaces, or do you only want to keep one? We can say let's keep all. You have the option to just hold on to one patch. We'll keep all of them. Okay, so part of our job as a CATIA or a surfacing designer is to go in and fix these problems. And we're most likely will have to create curves and profiles. In this case, we can just use these linear profiles to patch things up and fix these areas. So again, think of yourself as a tailor. You're making a tailored suit or a shirt, right? And you're trying to fix the areas where you go from sleeve to the main portion of the suit to the collar, etc. Okay. All right, so let me go back. I think we're going to end this video. Again, we use the plane as our reference. Let's go back. And again, if we change the angle or change the plane, we can get a cleaner surface. Right here, it's planar and it's overlapping itself. So if I go back to sweep and change the angle, let's try 45 degrees. See if that works better. 45. Preview. That may work, right? Let's go with fill twisted areas. Preview. Maybe that's not what we want, but you can always play around with it. Again, the sharp turns are the bad areas. Let's go to 90 degrees. So what we get, 90 degrees. Preview. Oh, that's a lot cleaner, right? So it's no longer flat. We kept the same reference plane, the XY plane, right? And we rotated 90 degrees with respect to this plane, and we get a cleaner sweep. Okay, so that's the end of this video. Let's go ahead and save it. Even if you didn't get a nice clean surface, that's okay. You still get the full credit. Okay, so let's go File, Save As. So this is the twisted one, the first one. The first swept video. And then we're going to move on and create explicit and linear on the second and third videos. Okay, and save. And that's the end of this video.